Hello everyone. Today we are going to study about synovial joint. In the earlier videos we studied about fibrous joint, we studied about cartilaginous joint, and now in this video we will study about synovial joint. Synovial joint is a type of joint in which you will find the synovial fluid. Now this synovial joint is characterized by the presence of three main things. The one is joint cavity. This is the joint cavity. Synovial membrane. This is the synovial membrane, and joint capsule. It's a ligament type of thing, or we can say tendon or ligament type of thing. So what synovial joint constitute of? Synovial joint constitute of joint cavity, synovial membrane, and joint capsule. As we studied, fibrous joint was made up of fibrous tissue. The cartilaginous joint was made up of hyaline cartilage and fibrous tissue, fibrocartilage. Similarly, synovial joint is made up of synovial fluid, synovial membrane, joint cavity, and joint capsule. So here this is the extremity of one bone, or we can say epiphysis of one bone. This is the epiphysis of second bone. This is the spongy bone. This is medullary cavity. This is periosteum as discussed in the earlier videos. This is compact bone. This is the synovial membrane. This is the articular cartilage. This is the joint cavity which contains synovial fluid, and this whole thing is joint capsule. Now let us learn in the detail about this particular thing. Now a typical synovial joint constitute of the following things. First is the articular surface, which can be facet, condyle, trochlea, cavity, etc. We will discuss these things in practical labs. I will make a video inshallah on this particular topic, but in few days. So this is, you can see, this is the articular surface, which can be in the form of facet, condyle, trochlea, cavity, or etc. Second is the articular cartilage. This is the articular cartilage. This was articular surface, and this is above it articular cartilage. And this articular cartilage is generally hyaline cartilage. What is it? Hyaline cartilage. On concave surface, the cartilage is thickest on periphery, whereas on the convex surface it is thickest towards the center. What it is telling? It is telling this, that this hyaline cartilage on the peripheral region is thin, and in the center it is thick, where, as it said, the cartilage is thickest on periphery, whereas on convex surface it is okay. What it is telling? It is telling it is the convex surface. In the convex surface, the hyaline cartilage is thickest in the center, and in the concave surface, this is the concave surface, the hyaline cartilage is thickest at the periphery. So it is a type of knee joint which we are seeing here. This is a knee joint, and it is a synovial joint. Now this hyaline cartilage, which acts as an articular cartilage, is avascular. There is no blood supply, and the nutrition to this cartilage is provided by the synovial membrane, which I showed you in the diagram. Now let us discuss some more important terms. We have intracartilage, intra-articular cartilage. Now what is this intra-articular cartilage? As the name suggests itself, that it is a type of cartilage present between two articular surfaces. Like we have this one articular surfaces and the another articular surfaces. This particular cartilage, which is present between two articular surfaces, is known as intra-articular cartilage. And the example which we are showing in this figure is intervertebral disc. We have meniscus also, like this is one bone, this is second bone. So these are two articulating surfaces. Between these two articulating surfaces, we have this meniscus as what? Intra-articular cartilage. The examples are intervertebral discs, meniscus, and marginal cartilage. Okay. Now let us study about joint capsule. What is this joint capsule? So this joint capsule is a thin membrane. It is a thin membrane, as you can see. It is a thin membrane which originates from periosteum. This is the periosteum, which originates from periosteum at margins of articular surfaces to enclose the joint cavity. This cavity between these two bones is covered by this thin membrane which arises from periosteum from the margins of the bone. So this constitutes joint capsule. Okay. Now this joint capsule consists of two more layers. One is outer fibrous capsule and inner synovial membrane. This outer fibrous capsule, as you will see in the next diagram, this is joint capsule. So the outer layer is of dense connective tissue. And the inner layer is made up of synovial membrane, which was providing nutrition to this articular cartilage. Okay. So now what is this outer fibrous capsule constituted of? So it possesses dense irregular connective tissue, and this outer fibrous capsule is also known as capsular ligament. So if questions come, what is capsular ligament? So capsular ligament is the outer layer of joint capsule which is irregular connective tissue. Okay. So now let us study about inner synovial membrane. It lines the joint cavity. Inside this space you will find the joint cavity, and this joint cavity is lined by inner synovial membrane. This inner synovial membrane supplies blood vessels and nerves. It is supplied with blood vessels and nerves. This is, I write with this particular sign. It secretes synovial fluid to lubricate the joint, to reduce the friction between these two articulating surfaces. There is a fluid kind of thing filled between these two bones in the joint cavity, which is known as synovial fluid, secreted by synovial membrane, which is a part of what? Which is a part of joint capsule. Now let us come to ligaments. The ligaments associated with the synovial joint. Now let us first study about annular ligament. It is present in the form of rings near joint capsule. As you can see here, this is annular ligament in the form of ring. Now what is this ligament? There are two terms, ligament and tendon. Ligament joins two bones and tendon joins a muscle with a bone. Okay. So this annular ligament is present in the form of rings near joint capsule for passage and protection of tendons. This is a kind of ring and it is known as annular ligament. Understood? Now second is interosseous ligament. As name suggests, it is present between two bones. Like this is one bone, this is another bone. So as you can see, this is syndesmosis between these bones. It's a type of fibrous joint, as I discussed in the previous videos. So this ligament which joins this bone with this bone is anterior tibiofibular ligament. And here you can see in this diagram we have interosseous ligament here between these two bones. Now let us move further on intracapsular ligament. What is this intracapsular ligament? It is ligament which is located within the joint capsule. Inside the joint capsule, the ligament present is known as intracapsular ligament, like cruciate ligament of Stifle joint. Like this is Stifle joint, knee joint. So you can see here is patella. This is the anterior cruciate ligament. It is inside the joint capsule. The next one is collateral ligament. This collateral ligament is extracapsular. Okay, it is extracapsular ligament, like lateral capsular ligament and medial capsular ligament. Also, this is also capsular ligament. This is the outer layer of dense connective tissue. This is also known as capsular ligament, as we studied here. Okay. Now there are certain movements in synovial joint. There are various movements, but let us look at the important movements. Like if you move your body part away from your body, like the angle is decreasing here, the angle is decreasing. Like you are taking your bone towards your thigh, so angle is decreasing, it is known as flexion. If you are taking your leg towards other end, that is known as extension. If you are taking your body away from the medial end, it is known as abduction. If you are taking your body or a part of your body towards the medial end, it is known as adduction. Like hand to upside, that is hypertection. Extension downside. We have, if we have palm towards earth, it is known as pronation. If we have palm towards sky, it is known as supination. So these are certain terms which we have to relate to. Like rotation, if we are rotating our hand at a fixed position, keeping this position fixed or this position fixed. If we are keeping this position movable, that is known as circumduction. Now let us study about some important synovial joint. So the first one is pivot joint. You can see this is pivot joint. The second one is hinge joint. Third one is saddle joint. Fourth one is plane joint. Fifth one is condylite joint. And the last one is ball and socket joint. Now let us study about all of them. The first one of synovial joint is pivot joint. Now what is this pivot joint? It is one bone. When one bone rotates along the long axis of other bone, then it is known as pivot joint. Like this is the one vertebra, this is in the, there is a depression where this part of bone is meeting with this particular vertebra. So this bone can rotate along the long axis of this lower bone. So it is a type of pivot joint between atlas and axis bone. These are atlas and axis bone. It is, this particular articulation is known as atlantoaxial articulation. And the next example is ellipsoidal joint. Now one important thing you have to remember, that pivot joint is also known as trochoid joint. Okay. The second one is hinge joint. Here the convexity of one bone articulates with concavity of other bone. Like this surface is concave, this is convex. So one convexity of one bone is meeting to the concavity of other bone. So they are making a hinge joint. And their main function is extension and flexion, as I described in the above diagram. Extension and, this was extension and flexion. Okay. Now the examples are elbow joint or fetlock joint. I have discussed these joints in the earlier videos. You may please have a look on those. You will easily understood about them. Now what we have to consider after this hinge joint, condyloid joint. Condyloid joint is composed of an egg-shaped bone. If we have an egg-shaped bone, this is egg-shaped bone, and the other bone that fits into a similar shaped cavity, it is known as condyloid joint. The typical example is carpal and metacarpal. If you can see, these are metacarpals and this is phalange. Here you can see this is a type of condyloid joint. Moving further, then we have plane joints. Here articulating surfaces are flat, like this one. Here you can see articulation between carpals. The most important one is ball and socket joint, where spherical head of one bone fits in the cavity of other bone. The skull of one bone fits in the cavity of other bone. Like here, this is the skull of one bone, it is fitting in the cavity of other bone. So it is a type of ball and socket joint, or a synovial joint, which is a ball and socket joint. Example is hip joint. So this was all about the joints we studied today. So thanks.